Welcome to another I Am Youman podcast. We were slow at the shop because we had some sickness and we had some people out. So we're playing a little bit of catch up. So we're going to rerun the journey from $600,000 in debt, the story of my life when I lost my home and lost my business. It's particularly appropriate right now because I am shocked and frankly causes me to lose a little bit of faith in the, certainly in the state of New York, that somebody decided to make gambling on your phone legal in the state of New York. It's the idea that I can take my phone and place a bet without leaving my house. If that seems to be a good idea to anybody in the legislature or anybody in government, I recommend they take a trip to a casino and just watch the misery that is standing around the tables and walking out the doors. And imagine if people could do this in the darkness in their homes without anybody knowing about it. That's where it's headed. I understand that the state needs money or wants money. I don't understand how they will steal it from their poorest residents. I think that decision is astounding. It is illogical. It makes no sense to damage your citizens for the sake of stealing some money. We can do better than that. And I frankly couldn't let it go without saying anything. Having been a dice dealer in Vegas for 2 years when I was a young man and seeing the misery that shows up monthly when they can, the gambling is the person's friend. Does New York State want to promote that? Do you want to say this is an okay way of entertainment, sitting at home with your phone, playing roulette or playing blackjack or gambling on sports? And I have to say the fact that all the sports have gotten behind this effort and they spend a large part of their broadcasting odds. What's next? I go to a major sports institution for a loan and they Shylock rate me to death. There are things people should not do for money, and the state should certainly set the example so that the people who are not that educated understand what they shouldn't be doing for money. The state has given the other example. Everything's okay, take the money, and the big joke, if you have a gambling problem, call. It's a joke. Everybody laughs at that. But they're not laughing now. They're actually saying we're doing this the right way. They have a $2,500 limit on a credit card. $2,500 to many people is a world of money, is 7 or 8 weeks of income. You think it's okay for somebody to gamble away 7 or 8 weeks of income? You think that'll have a good result? This is craziness. Where are we headed? What are we doing? And why aren't there things we just won't do? Visit us at I.M Youman. We're trying to make a difference, trying to turn the light on in the state of New York. Tell these people, you can't gamble from your phone. Next, they'll have heroin coming out of your phone and you can stay home and do that. Another good idea from New York. By the way, you'll raise a lot of money. Have a great day. Scott Suprina, hoping things get brighter tomorrow.
Does failure exist?
In my experience, and that's what this is about really, my experience. I don't want to go further than that. Obviously, I develop theories based on my experience, but I want to be clear, it's my experience. Failure to me exists when you quit. When you stop the effort of what you're doing. And it's not failure to readjust your thought process and decide what you were trying to do doesn't make sense. That's a readjustment. So to me, stick-to-itiveness is the key to being successful in an endeavor. But for me, every experience that I had that seemed bad at the time, later on I realized had fruit or education that I needed built into it, that allowed me to move forward to a place that was better than the place I was when I had the experience of not getting to my destination. I think when you have that feeling of failure, what I've seen separate success from not success is people don't take responsibility. And they kind of tend to, in the vast majority, say something happened to their plan. Somebody didn't do the right thing. Somebody did not give them what they needed, the space they needed, the rent they needed, the whatever. It was somebody else's fault. I was very lucky, and for a reason really unknown to me, perhaps it was the way I was brought up or something else, when I hit the deepest spot in my career, I realized there was only one person to blame. Not that blame is important, but one person responsible for putting me there, and that was me. And from what I've seen of people in the aftermath of quitting or giving up, quite often it's based on them simply deciding that somebody else put them there. You can't fix something if somebody else did it. You can't right that. You really have to take responsibility and dissect what you did and what you did wrong to get better at something.
At one point in time, you talked about it last podcast, of being 600,000 in debt and losing your house and losing your home. How did you, a lot of people quit at that point in time, right? A lot of people say, oh, I can't do this. A lot of people say, I got to get a regular job. And then they live in that perpetual debt and that cycle for the rest of your life. You being at the lowest point right there financially, I don't know if that's your lowest point personally, but that must have been a tough shift. Out of that, you're more than a $500,000 in debt.
That was the situation was created by the fact that I've always been a pretty good salesman, I think by birth. It's a gift that I had, the gift of gab, or the ability to convince people or to know your question before you asked it, which is what I believe is at the heart of sales. If I can answer your question about a product before you've asked it, I pretty much have you sold. And that was something I always understood. Maybe it's from being the fourth kid in the family and watching everybody else grow up and have their battles. But going through and buying my father's business, being a great salesman and knowing nothing about business, not having a business education, and selling for less than I should have for years, led me to a point where I had more debt than I had money coming in. And when it caught up with me, it was devastating. I mean, to think, to know that you're working hard, to know that you're getting up at 6 and you're not getting home till 9 at night and you're putting in the effort, and then to realize it's too far gone to save is an awakening. What have I done? I'm grateful for the fact that I came out of it and knew I did it. I had the support of a mentor who was my next door neighbor as a child growing up, a guy I called Mr. Colarusso. And Mr. Colarusso knocked on my door. And I don't know if you've ever been broke, but when you're broke, everybody that used to be your friend or your ally or your business associate runs the other way for fear you're going to ask for money or help or something else. And I received a knock on the door from a guy that my whole life, from I was 7 to 20, called Mr. Colarusso. And he introduced himself as Joe and said if I wanted to take another shot at this, he knew the business end and he would help me, and he helped me. And he said to me, I said exactly what you just asked me. I said, I think I'm just going to go work for someone else. And he said, Scott, don't do that. He had worked for Hazeltine Electronics for 35 years and was a leading rep for some of their most innovative products overseas. And because of that, when his kids were graduating, he couldn't be there because Hazeltine said, get on a plane and go close this deal in Italy. Or Hazeltine said, do this. He said, do you want to run your own life? Then take another shot at this. You can do this. And the part of the story that I most appreciate is I would have to plead guilty to being a know-it-all. at a very young age. I knew all the answers. That's how I self-destructed. I didn't need advice. I knew what I was doing. I was a great salesman. Joe had one rule, came in and gave me one rule. If you ask for my advice and you don't take it, you can't ask again. And all I could say is, boy, did he know who he was dealing with. Because for about 3 years, I would get in a business situation and I would go see Joe or call Joe and he'd say, do this. And I'd hang up that phone and I'd do that. I didn't question it. I didn't wonder why. I knew that this guy was my tether to a good life, my way back, the guy who was willing to help me for, frankly, at that time, an unknown reason. At this time, I understand it's just for love, just to do it, just to get, I believe, to garner some value out of all that time he had given up, the time he had paid for in blood, to share that with somebody as I want to do here now, for the reason of sharing it, no return required. And that developed into a great relationship. But I knew that I had made the mistakes. And I proceeded as if I knew I had made the mistakes, cautiously, which I had never done before. I've never been a cautious person. So the mentorship from Joe, from a guy named Larry, who I went to junior high with, my sister, these people really came to my rescue.
That's the toughest part about entrepreneurship, which I'm finding right now, is when do you know when to hold them and fold them, or keep going? And as an entrepreneur, you don't want to end up hurting yourself in the long run, in terms of there is a point where the writing's on the wall, or do you disagree?
I would say, as it was for me, there is a point where the writing's on the wall. You will probably not get to that point if you're paying attention, if you're on the planet. There are enough signs. There are signs along the way. There were signs early on I wasn't making money. When you're in business and you start taking a deposit from client A and paying off the debt of client B, you should know you're not making money. But when you're living the illusion that I want to survive, it's about to turn, it's about to turn. If you don't have your feet planted on the ground, if you're dreaming, I think dreaming creates some of the most wonderful things on the planet. I think acting as if you're living in a dream is not healthy for success. And I think if in my experience, the second time around, when I was focused and paying attention and going to people I considered brighter than me on topics I wasn't sure I understood, you don't get to the writing on the wall. You see a mark on the wall and you go get help. There's never a word on the wall. There's never, you're out of business, because that takes too long to write. You start looking at it when you see something wrong, the littlest thing wrong. That's focus. That's, where I say, in my opinion, the elementary school and junior high I went to would have saved a lot of time teaching me meditation. They would have had somebody by high school paying attention, not entertaining himself looking out the window.
How so?
Out the window was just more interesting to me in high school than in the classroom.
Why meditation?
Meditation for me calmed me down. Took I think a thought process that ran perhaps too fast and slowed it down and gave me a spot to step in, take control, think about what's important every day, focus on that. And really, I would say meditation gave me focus. Meditation gave me also a spiritual side, listening to that voice inside of me. In the other previous podcast, I mentioned a voice inside of me. I think it's an important point to make. And I'm going to try to do this in a way that everybody gets it, because it's a little difficult to understand. I'm not talking about the voice when a beautiful car goes by and you say to yourself, wow, that car is sexy, I want one of those. I'm talking about the voice that when you say that says, wow, you thought that car was sexy. The observer, not the societal person who's put here, sculpted by where you grew up or what people taught you or anything else that speaks to you incessantly. The voice in your head that's watching it all. The voice in your head that is your conscious, that is your spirit. That's the one that meditation allows you to hear. It's not your day-to-day, she's hot, wow, I really hope my wife decides to marry me, whatever. It's the longer play. It's the longer thing. It's not the moment.
You have me reading the laws of the 7 spiritual laws of success right now.
Yeah, Deepak Chopra.
Yeah. And I haven't gotten too far, and I'm only about 25 pages in, and I'm at the law of the first one, the law of pure potentiality, right?
Yeah.
And how, if we can go from that law, has that helped you reverse? Because I really want to focus at how you got out of that hole and stayed on that path. Because I always say, I had a basketball coach when I was younger say, focus, follow one course until successful. How are you able to, now that course veers, you take different paths in that course, but it's that one course of entrepreneurship and ownership, right, and spirituality that you took. How did you stay on that path to reverse out of debt?
I followed the advice of Joe Colarusso, which was, and I mentioned it the other day, whatever you do, your customer is first. The person that you're selling to, the person that you promise something to, must be delivered. It's not, I want your money. I'll tell it to you this way. From the time I was, probably 14, I always worked after school, always hustled. I like to work. It brings me joy. Doesn't matter what the work is. So I always aspired. I didn't aspire. I wanted to have $1 million cash before I was 30 years old. I now believe, because I wanted $1 million cash as my end goal, as my end game, I was unable to get it. If I would have wanted every one of my clients to be thrilled with the work I've done, the $1 million would have come. But I didn't want that. I wanted $1 million cash. I wanted for me, for only me. So I think the difference is, I know for me the difference was, when I started to actually focus on doing the job, being the most creative seating guy I could be, doing projects that other guys would say were impossible, for the sake of doing the work, the money came. And that's what Joe told me to do. He had wisdom that he bestowed upon me that I believe to this day is the reason I came back. And when you're doing that, there's joy every day. But the joy is not measured by the profit, because let's face it, sometimes when you're estimating big jobs, you'll make a clerical error. And instead of making $100,000, you'll walk away with $6,000. And you'll feel that sucked. But you'll turn around and look at what you built and look at what you did, and you'll say, that was great. And in fact, it was great, because it brought your name up a notch. It brought who you are in the business up a notch. And if you're looking at your dollars and cents, that just, it's like playing the stock market. I'm not playing in stock market with my own companies. I'm loving the ride. I'm doing it out of passion, which is dying in this country.
You think so?
I walk into Home Depot and the guy in Home Depot wants to sell me something and he says aisle 12. I get to aisle 12, it's in aisle 8. He doesn't care because he's an hourly guy. There's no percentage in him. I used to go to a local hardware store. The guy was like Kreskin. I could ask him where some obscure thing was. He'd lead me there. That was love of the work. That was his craft. That's what he did. What happened to apprenticeship? What happened to me taking you by the hand and teaching you my craft? I have a guy who works with me for 5 years who went to school with my son Dalton, who was my apprentice in the sales of seating systems. He's brilliant. He is every bit as capable as I ever was to do what I did. That's a beautiful thing when you can impart that to somebody. Where is that? How did we move away from that model? What was it? Efficiency? Financial progress? I don't think so. I don't think so. You need to hone your skills, and we are the result of that not happening. And that is a result of corporate greed. And there needs to be a new paradigm, which we'll talk about in upcoming episodes. I have an idea.
You find yourself at a point in time in your life where, just to bring us back, you really thought about just working for somebody. And having sat, I've probably known you for 2 weeks now.
Excuse me?
I've known you for 2 weeks now.
A little bit more, but yeah.
I could never see you working for someone at any point in life.
And it's funny because the first job that I know I could have done very well is sell cars. I could have sold cars. I could have sold life insurance. I could sell. And by the way, the thing I will state, because I have a microphone and a camera on me, being a salesperson is not a sleazy job. Salespeople who sell quality based on what they know and what they believe are doing you a service. Somehow in my lifetime, it has turned out that salespeople are wicked and evil and plotting against you. Not always the case, but that's a different story. I just have to defend my craft.
You sit back and you look on where you are right now. We've talked, and you never saw this point, like this bright of a period.
Oh, I will. Yeah, I thought I worked hard. I had a very nice life. I was grateful for all of that, but what that led to when somebody bought my company and my other company grew to a size because my son is managing it and he has that under control and I'm able to step back and enjoy the fruits of my labor at this level. If you would have asked me, I would have probably estimated that financially I'd be someplace 25% of where I am. 25%. And by the way, that would have been a happy place. That would have been a very happy place. But now there is that goes back to the part of the story where do the right thing, be a good person, and that is its reward. That is the reward, not having to look over your shoulder, not wondering who's chasing you. I mean, candidly, when I went broke, answering the phone was scary. Wondering which creditor was calling me up to yell at me for money was so depressing, so monumentally heavy, and so ugly. I would like no one to ever have to do that. It's a factor of education. You could be educated about putting yourself in that kind of peril. You could be educated to see the writing on the wall before it comes. There could be early warning signs. I mean, don't get me started on the banking system and the credit cards and the amount of credit card debt that they'll allow you to accumulate and all of that. That's extortion. That's Shylock. Banks today are Shylocks. They're not banks. So, they're opportunistic. They're preying on people to give you credit and let you pay just the minimum so the credit lasts forever. That's craziness.
Besides your mentor, what was the first step physically and financially of getting out of that hole?
One amazing step out of it that I learned about that I was totally unaware about is when you're in financial peril like that, I had always asked the guy at the bank to do me a favor and never talk to my wife about the mortgage. Because my wife is not built for financial conversations. It's just not something she enjoys. She doesn't want to deal with the pressure. And that was our deal. She has a lot of other responsibilities, and that was mine. And I came home one day and she was in tears, and the guy from the bank called her up and said, look, we're going to come take your house. Little did he know that that date I have gone to see a bankruptcy attorney. And the guy said to me, look, and I'll share this with the world, the best thing you can do right now is to declare bankruptcy and stay in your house and not pay for your mortgage for 2.5 years. And I told the guy on the phone, I said, listen, I said, what's my house worth? And he told me. I said, what do I owe? And he told me. And the number I owed was higher than the value of the house. I said, it's your lucky day. You can walk into your boss and tell him he's got his house back. And he immediately said, no, 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 no. You can pay me something. What can you do? I said, no, just got back from my attorney. You can have the house back. And what I did not know, because banks certainly don't share this information, I was in that house for 2.5 years, mortgage free. That was the single thing that allowed me to breathe, to get back on the map, to grind out a living. And by the way, I paid back that $600,000 in debt. I paid all the people that I owed money. And I lived that way. And that, coupled with realizing I was the cause of the problem, allowed me to keep going, gave me the self-respect to keep going. And that's probably the most important thing to come out of debt with, to come out of that bottom with a self-respect, that you can still love yourself, that you don't feel like the bad guy that everybody is accusing you of being. I think that's critical to moving forward.
How many years did it take you to?
It took about 3 years to get to ground zero, but I was lucky. I had a couple of creditors who worked through it with me.
Now, this was a new business. So
the old business we closed, playground equipment business, which was love of my life, love building playgrounds for kids.
That was your pop's business.
My dad did an occasional playground, not his focus, but I took it and did that. And Joe said to me, pick one part of your business that you loved. And I picked stadium seating. And the fascinating part of the story to me is, at that time, I said to him, I'm not sure I can make a living just selling stadium seating. But he said, pick one thing and focus on it. And that's the one thing I picked. And I will tell you, you can make 100 livings just focusing on stadium seating. So
how crucial is it to just focus on one thing? Is that a thing that everybody, or most, not everybody, because there's no rule that it's for everybody, but is that a thing that majority of people looking to get into anything should just focus on one thing? If I'm a running back, be a running back. Wide receiver, be a wide receiver.
I'd be something other than truthful if I told you that I totally agree with that, because I have a hard time practicing it. But I believe if you're my mentor and you tell me to do that, you're giving me good advice because of the nature of the beast. I've had an issue since I was a little kid, sticking with something and focusing on it. So if you're built that way, I think it's probably good advice to get your head above water by focusing on one thing. I think that that's important initially. I think where I am now in my life, I mean, you know it, I've got about 5 projects going, but I more or less have 5 projects with 5 different people running the 5 projects. So it's my dream. I get to be scatterbrained, but I have a separate brain on it. So I've learned how to work with who I am inside. I love going from topic to topic. My brain works that way. I love multitasking. Is it your most efficient, most direct way to a goal? Absolutely not. Straight line.
How does fear play into all of this? So was there any fear?
All there was fear.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I believe every decision I made, the reason I did things like other people wanted to do them was fear. The reason I practiced business like someone else was fear. I would tell you in truth now, for me, the way that I conduct business, time out. Do we know who that is?
Yeah, it's like my best friend.
Let him in.
Hour and a half away.
Let him in. I'm not going to let you stay out there. No, come on in. Good, man. So the fear thing, I only discovered after the bottom fell out. And now I would tell you there's nothing to fear but fear itself. That's the truest reality that I can give you, that for me, fear has left. Fear has gone. But then again, I would tell you in a spiritual way, I believe that you build your own protection. That being godly assists you in your own protection. That there is another force around that's helping you. Certainly, I'm sure of that.
Well, what if I was to be the devil's advocate? You know, I'm gonna sit here and tell you that that's bullshit. Here's why, Scott. I'm gonna tell you it's bullshit because the bank that was coming after you for your house, the people that you had to pay back, they don't see the spirit around you or God around you to help you get out of debt and to help you do what you had to do and to stop your fear. Fear doesn't know. That little subconscious mind in the back of your cerebellum doesn't know that God and your spirituality is going to fight fear off.
No. At that time, I was as fearful as they get during that experience. In hindsight, Mr. Devil's Advocate, and I love you guys. You guys are my favorite. You're missing one thing, and that's faith. And I won't tell you faith in what, that's up to you, but faith. Looking back on the fearful times, I think, I'm having a hard time putting it together. I think for me, the fear left when I realized that the bank chasing me, the losing of the house, by the way, the wife who stuck with me was also in this episode for a reason. So all those things were happening. I was a hard study. I did one semester in college and left because I called my dad and I said, I know everything they're teaching me. I don't need to be here. So the only way someone like that learns, you have to take his house, you have to take his business, you have to get his attention. So the banker, the guy taking my house, all of them were working to get my attention. And where I am now, and that education-wise, value of who I am and how I understand what I learned, I value more than people I meet. The education I took was pure. Sometimes it cost blood. But if you live through it, and I mean if you live through it, because people opt out, and thank God I didn't opt out, but if you live through it, that education, I can't put that out of my head. I can't forget that, some class I had in economics. It's not a class in economics. It's take your shit and go live in the street. That's not, I was there on a Wednesday and he was a good teacher. He got my attention and I understood how you go broke. That's real life education. Guess what? I promised myself I owed my family better. I knew that I could do better, and I was devastated with embarrassment. I think I was virtually non-existent. I was this big. You know, I was nothing, but that education apparently was the proper school for me. It was the proper school. And when you go through the life, you may say, that's be the devil's advocate. All that shit happened to me. I brought all that shit upon me. I directly asked for it. I ran amok. I did whatever I wanted to. I disrespected laws, spiritual and otherwise. That's what happens. That'll happen every time. I'm convinced of it. And if you turn it around, and if you decide that you need to be the best you could be, there's also laws for that. There's laws of abundance. Keep reading the book. There's laws that will deliver you. By the way, just as sure as they came and threw me out of my house, they will come and help you. Just because it's a dark situation doesn't mean it's not help. Nothing could have turned me around but what turned me around. And the fact that my wife stuck with me, that's a beautiful thing.
Did you have any kids at this time?
Yeah, I did. I had a young son who, to this day, I think living in that experience in that house with me avoiding the phone made him today partially who he is. He's very trepidatious. He's going to check things 3 times before he does it. And about 4 years ago, the light went on. I went, I'll bet when he was little and learning to talk, that experience in that house that I was getting thrown out of during that dark time has made him constricted. And Chandler, I apologize to you for that.
That's the part that is the most amazing part of the story. And it, dare I say,
Dare away.
that the way you got through that was because of obviously everything you talked about, but to say I'm 600,000 in debt, I have a baby boy, I'm married, I have a wife, a home, fuck it, I'm gonna keep doing this business shit and I'm gonna truck through. That takes a little bit of some intestinal fortitude, but it also takes a little selfishness on your part to say, selfishness and foresight, to say that I know I'm down 35 in the 4th quarter, but I'm gonna come back and win this game. Maybe the 3rd quarter.
I will go back to, I don't think it was selfishness as much as I would call it desperation. I felt taking a job for somebody else is the easy way out. And the only advantage to the easy way out is it's the easy way out. And working for myself and proving to myself that I could do better was the only path to loving myself. I was, for some reason, wise enough or tapped on the shoulder by something at the time that said to me, you cannot quit. You can reorganize, you can reset, but you cannot quit. I think when God assembled me, he gave me some really wonderful parts. I think to take a job for somebody else and not have the growth experiences and the path I took would have been a shameful waste. I feel so blessed that I had the support of my wife. My wife never looked twice. She took the hit with me. She stood there by me and relied on me and supported me. And it's led to a wonderful thing that is today. And people, and what I say to people is, whatever you're going through, and this is the way I should have looked at it. Is there a power trying to nudge you in another direction? Is there something saying, this is too hard? Do you have something in your head that you dream about doing? And should you be doing that? These are the important questions. Not how much does it pay an hour? Not how long can I do this before I get to move up to a job I hate equally as much? When am I going to make the real fucking money? Guess what? You can make the real money today, and if you're miserable, you will find a vice to spend it on. You will find some shit to ruin yourself. There is no other way. I sit here happy. By the way, I'm happy that I met you, Mr. Devil's Advocate. I'm happy I met you. You bring me joy. You have fire in you that I see. This is fun for me. I don't need to be paid for it. I don't need to sell anybody anything. I'm not selling anything. I'm sharing my experience. I'm sharing the truth. The truth has value. If no one wants to watch this podcast, it's okay. It's helping me. It's helping me to remember how I got here. And that's like meditation every day. If you think about the crap you went through and the battles you've won and the mistakes you made. People who get in trouble are people who forget the mistakes they made. They think they're bulletproof. Give them a couple of $1 million and watch how great they are. One's got nothing to do with the other. You know, there's a thing that drives me crazy. I don't know if we spoke about it even off this. Forbes lists people net worth. For what purpose? What's the goal? Is that your rating in society? Is that how good a man you are? Who the hell reads that shit, and why would you want to be the richest guy? Wouldn't you want to be the happiest guy? Where's that list? Where's the list of the happiest people on the planet? That's who I want to chase. I want to learn from them. The richest guy on the planet? Is he happy? Does Forbes tell you that? I've never read it. Do they tell you which rich guy is the happiest guy also? Or do they not care? And is that a problem in the society? That's a problem. When it's based on whose opportunity got him the biggest payoff, that's no way to measure anything. That's how we measure everything. What happened? How do we get there, huh?
I think we're going to end right there.
Oof. That was fun.
Book it.